Okay, thank you so much. I would like to welcome you all to this session, this special session. We have theme of this session, basic income in developing countries. So now with us, let me introduce myself first. So my name is Titis. I'm the master of ceremony of this event. So before start this session, I would like to introduce also our moderator today. In this session, we have moderator Tatat. She is program manager of INFIT, International NGO Forum of Indonesian Development. Welcome, Tatat. Thank you so much for coming to this event.
Thank you, Titis, for introducing me. Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Hi.
Good evening. And also, I would like to welcome Dr. Ali Mutlu.
Hello.
Thank
Good
you
evening.
for coming to this event. So Dr. Ali is from Citizens Basic Income Research Development, Culture and Dissemination Society. And then the second speaker of this session is Dr. Sarath Davala. He is the chair of Basic Income Earth Network. Welcome, Dr. Sarath Davala. Thank you for coming to this event and becoming our speakers. And then
Thank you, Titis. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And then the third speakers of this session is Mr. Jae-Yong Kim. He is the policy director of Gyeonggi-do, Gyeonggi Province in South Korea. Welcome to this event, Mr. Kim. And
hello, everyone.
Thank you so much for coming to this event and becoming our speakers. So, I don't want to hold you too long. So, Tatat will lead the discussion. So, Tatat, the screen is yours.
All right, thank you very much, Titis. So this session will be interpreted also to Bahasa Indonesia. So I would just remind you again that you can choose the channel either English or Indonesia. So yeah, my name is Tatat. I will reintroduce myself. I'm as a program manager at International NGO Forum on Indonesian Development. It is actually a national NGO, but since it was established in 1985 outside of Indonesia, so the name is International NGO, but it's actually national NGO. So a bit introduction of INFIT. So INFIT is also a part of this Universal Basic Income Congress as one of the supporting organizations. And we have, and one of our concern is also on the reducing inequality in Indonesia and also in the global. So I would like to introduce Dr. Sarath Davala. He's the chair of Basic Income Earth Network and also coordinator of India Network for Basic Income, and also was a research director of Self-Employed Women Associations, who was maybe Dr. Sarath will explain it later, but it was involved in the experiments of universal basic income in India.
Yeah.
And then the second speaker is Dr. Ali Mutlu. I don't know how to pronounce your last name. I'm sorry. So Dr. Ali Mutlu is this. Sorry?
Köylüoğlu.
Köylüoğlu. Okay.
Thank you.
So yeah, he's from the Citizens Basic Income Research Development, Culture and Dissemination Society. Also active in Basic Income Earth Network, and of course one of the prominent advocate of universal basic income both in Turkey and also as well as in the global. And then the third speaker is Mr. Kim Jae-Yong, which is the Chief of Policy Commitment of the Gyeonggi Province, South Korea, who's the largest experiment for the universal basic income in the world, who applied the universal basic income. So as for today, this is the first day of the National Meeting of Indonesian Basic Income Societies, and for today, the whole day we have discussed several specific topics regarding the Indonesian basic income, especially how the possibility of the implementation in Indonesia. For now, we would like to discuss more on the broader context, which is in the global context, especially how the implementation or the experiment of the basic income in developing countries. I wouldn't say that South Korea is developing countries, but yeah, we can explore more in the discussion. So now I would like to start with the first speaker, the first resource person, which is Dr. Sarath Davala. So over to you, 15 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tatat, and thank you so much, Yanu, who was behind this. It's such a pleasure and such an honor to be here and to speak to the audience here. And 2 years ago, I was in Jakarta, and I think one of the first seminars we had, and Yanu had organized a seminar on basic income. And it was really a pleasure at that time. He was sitting in the US, and then he organized an online seminar, and I was sitting in Jakarta at that time. And it's such a pleasure to see today you organizing this big Congress. Such a pleasure. And on behalf of Basic Income Earth Network, I bring greetings to all of you. And I look forward to the Indo-Big becoming really big and then implement this wonderful, great idea. So I have 15 minutes. So I would like to basically portray a big picture, larger picture of when you say basic income in a developing economy. I would like to first say that basic income is relevant in every country in this world. And it's urgent. And we need to, every country is exploring the possibility of implementing it for reasons that I will come to. Anyway, we are talking about developing economies. So is there something distinct about developing economies? Is there something particular about developing economies and anything unique about them that we should think of basic income in a different context? There are some distinct qualities, but then without talking about the whole, we cannot talk about the part. So developing countries and the so-called developed countries and the so-called developing countries are interrelated in terms of globalized manufacturing, globalized import and export, globalized interdependence, I would say. Now, in a context like that, broadly, we can say that the developing economies have extreme poverty. They have very large proportion of the rural populations. You have the primary sector playing a very important role rather than the service sector. You have very low-end manufacturing happening because it has been shifted from the first world. You have the export orientation. In fact, export orientation has been there for a long time because the developing countries were exporting the minerals and the agricultural products to the rest of the world. Anyway, the developed economies have the something very different. I would not go into that because we know it's almost the opposite of that. What happened was there has been in the last 50 years, there has been 50, 70 years, there has been a global industrial shift. There has been a global, what we call today the globalization process. The industrial manufacturing has shifted from a certain type of countries to another type of countries. I'll give you a small example. In 1953, the wealthier countries were manufacturing nearly 95% of all the products and also exporting to all other countries. By 1990s, it has become 77%. That is 23% of the manufacturing has shifted to the relatively poorer countries. Now, if you see 2020, China alone is manufacturing nearly 30% of the global production, global manufacturing. You can imagine other countries, other smaller countries like India, smaller in the sense, relatively poorer countries like India, Bangladesh, Vietnam, Indonesia, and all that put together. You can see that a large portion of the manufacturing has come to the poorer countries, and the wealthier countries are primarily orienting themselves in terms of high-end, high design, high fashion, high cost manufacturing and those products. So as a result, when we talk about basic income, every country is talking about basic income, but each one is talking from their own context. Now, where there is service industry dominating, there is a threat of automation and job losses. Even in the poorer countries also, it's the service industries where there are job losses and automation happening, artificial intelligence taking over. So in the West, particularly in the West and the richer countries, the discussion of basic income is coming from the threat of job losses, which had already happened in the manufacturing industry in the last 4 or 5 decades. But now the service sector is heavily threatened because a lot of jobs could be completely automated. For example, look at your banks. I don't know how old are you, Tata, but when I was young, the banks were too many people were in the banks. Today, you hardly go to a bank because much of it we do it online. So the IT revolution has come and created this kind of a huge threat in the West. But in the third world countries, in the poorer countries, the discussion of basic income is coming in the context of poverty alleviation. Because in the whole discussion is happening, it is stitched into the discussion of poverty and poverty alleviation. So it is now, given that broad context where the discussion of basic income is coming from, basic income is unconditional basic income is a global idea, but the discussion always begins locally. It's a global idea which has 5 characteristics, which we know: it's unconditional, it's universal, it's individual, it's monthly, and it's only cash. These are the 5 characteristics of what you call a basic income. Others are not basic income, they are simple cash transfers. So these 5 characteristics, basic income, the cutting edge of this concept, this global idea, is the unconditionality. It is unconditional. There are no conditions at all, that every citizen is entitled to a certain minimum amount of basic income with which one can lead a decent basic life. And then he or she participate in the labor market. Now, so given that there is a crisis, so I would like to mention 2 important crises happening globally. One is an employment crisis, which I have just mentioned, that in today's world, we are no longer talking about full employment. No country today is talking about full employment. That is not the goal of the economies today, because they cannot provide full employment. It is not possible to have full employment. That is in the past. So because of that, most of the jobs are precarious jobs, temporary jobs, short-term jobs, and nobody is giving today. In the past, we talked about Japan used to give lifetime employment. Indian public sector was giving lifetime employment. Today, nobody can give a lifetime employment. So the point is that we are all becoming precarious, very precarious employment, very precarious existence, and very precarious security. So that is the employment crisis entire globe is going through. Even in the OECD countries, you are increasingly looking at the temporary jobs increasing and the permanent jobs decreasing everywhere, including Korea, including Japan. You take even in the Europe and also United States. So there is a whole global employment crisis, which means that the way we understood employment in the past is no longer valid. There is a new employment structure happening, and we need to better understand that and face it. Number one. The second crisis is the welfare crisis. The welfare state was originally conceived in the 1940s in the UK by a person called William Beveridge. He had produced a report which became the foundation of what we call today the welfare state. Now, that was the post-war Europe, and then the industry was booming, they had to rebuild their entire industry. In a situation like that, they could think of a full employment. They could think of giving employment to all of them. They had the surplus, they could create the industry. Now, at that time, welfare, social protection was seen for exceptions, not for the majority of the population. Today, welfare is necessary, social protection is necessary for the majority of the population, because the majority are in the precariat, what we call the precariat, people who are in the temporary jobs, people who are in the insecure jobs, and all that. Now, so given these, at the backdrop of these two crises, we have to now look at the future. What we have, the current welfare regimes that we have adopted are meant for protecting the exceptions, not the majority. But today we are in a situation where we have to protect the majority, and very few have secure jobs. They may be rich people, or they may be employed in the government, whatever, they have permanent jobs, good jobs. Now, in a situation like that, we're in a situation, why I'm calling it a welfare crisis, because we are in a situation where we have 21st century problems and 20th century solutions. What we need to do is that for 21st century problems, we should think of 21st century solutions. Now, that is where in every country there is a movement of basic income, because we are talking about the new solutions to the new problems. Okay. Now, there is a larger question of whether you can solve the problems of the developing countries in isolation. There is a need for a global reimagination of employment and welfare. And in addition to these two crises, I would like to add one more crisis, that is the climatic, global, ecological crisis. Now, we have reached a point with our growth-oriented economics. We have reached a point where we are threatening the very existence of this planet Earth, because there is no planet B. There's only planet one. We can't go and move to another. So that is the backdrop of that. Now, I will give you a small example of a developing country, and I'm most familiar with India. So 2 or 3 examples I will give about the structure of what it is like, and it may resonate with other developing countries as well. In India, if you have a labor force of like 450 million people, we have a labor force out of 1.3 billion population. Out of that, 95% of the labor force is in the informal sector, which means that in the informal sector means they have no protection at all. They have no employment protection. They have no job protection. They have no basic labor rights. There are no labor standards, blah, 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 all that. Now, only 5% is in the formal sector. And out of this 5%, the bulk of it is the public employment, which is the government employment, which means progressively the private sector industry also is slowly getting automated, or ancillarization we call, that you manufacture all your smaller parts in a smaller units where there are no labor rights, and then assemble them in a highly automated, sophisticated plant where you have some full-time employees. Now, maybe I have another 2-3 minutes. Tata, what do you say?
Yes, you have still 4 minutes.
4 minutes. Yeah, I will close very soon. So given a situation like that, now how do you care for the 95% of the population? And it's a matter of time in the next, in the next 10 years, maybe the 5% formal employment may even come down to 3% or 2%. Now you have this mass of people who are unprotected. Now, what are you going to do to take care of those people? Number one. Number two, look at the welfare spending. If you take the welfare spending, we have one of the our biggest program where we put $30 billion every year is our food security program. And officially it is known that there are 30% leakages of the delivery, and the targeting is flawed. is a problem. And the quality of grains that you give, it's a subsidized grains program, the quality of grains is very poor. So we have increased our welfare spending because our GDP has gone up, our budgets have gone up, but we have not improved our delivery. So there is a serious problem of welfare delivery itself, the welfare design itself, there is a problem. So these are the two things I just point out, which could be the case with other developing countries as to. Now, what is it that I will close with the last 4 or 5 points? Given this backdrop that I have portrayed in the last 12 minutes, what is it that we are going to do if we want to talk about basic income, if we want to talk about the relevance of basic income? What is it that we are going to do? In the first place, the task number 1 in a developing country is to interrogate and examine how we are doing our welfare spending. Let us look at our accounts. Let us look at how we have allocated our money, where we have allocated our social protection money, welfare money. How is the design of it? What is the design based on? Is the design based on old thinking, or is the design based on the new realities of our existence? That is task number 1. Task number 2, we have to ask in a realistic manner, how many decent jobs are we going to provide to our people in the next 30 years? Let us ask that question in a realistic way. You have the rural people in India, 60-70% of people live in rural areas. What are you going to do? Because the agriculture, which is their main occupation, is contributing only 50% to our GDP, which means that it's a low priority sector. No investments are going into it. No automation is happening there. Now, how are you going to, low wages are very low there. How are you going to take care of those people? Are you going to let them die? Now, the task number 3 we have to ask ourselves is what is the new design by which we can care for our populations? The primary task of any state, any government, is to care for its populations. Task number 4. In doing this, we should really seriously question, are the old methods of caring effective? Are they still effective today? Or if they are not effective, they have no place in our life. They have to be thrown away. However sacred they may be, however important ideologically may be, but as long as the bottom line is that the last man in your country, in my country, needs to be taken care of. Now, basic income, in my view, an unconditional basic income with all the 5 characteristics seems to be a good solution, provided we really want to open our eyes and see. As I think all our scriptures and all our philosophers have said, if you have your eyes open, if you want to see, you can see the truth. And the truth of the matter is we are in a crisis and we can find a solution. And there is wealth to be given and shared and cared for. So to my mind, I will close with last sentence, that to my mind, an unconditional basic income means is equal to a 4-letter word called care, C-A-R-E. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Davala, for your enlightening presentation. So I highlight several points, which is the first one is, this is very impressive sentence. 21st century problem needs 21st century solutions. It's very much agree. We need some very progressive solutions to our 21st century problems. And then also you highlight also several steps to consider or to implement the universal basic income, which is to interrogate or examine the welfare spending, because the universal basic income is actually one of or the best alternative to the welfare spending, which is ineffective by any means, like for example corruptions and other any means of ineffectiveness. So now we would like to move to the next speaker, which is Dr. Ali Mutlu. I'm sorry, the last name I couldn't pronounce again. Yeah.
No problem.
All right, with Dr. Ali Mutlu. So, okay, I over to you in 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, dear Tatat, and also dear Titis. Also, it's a pleasure for me to be participating in this panel discussion. Nice to see you, dear Sarath, and also Mr. Kim. But I would like to mention one more thing. I would like to thank a lot to our dear friend Yanu Prasetyo, which we are in contact. He's a very important UBI advocate. I would like to share a PowerPoint presentation. I will start from very fundamentals, but at the end of the presentation, I will try to point some very important and very dangerous things or obstacles against the implementation of UBI. Let me start my presentation. Okay, here it is. Okay, dear friends, this is Mutlu Köylüoğlu from Istanbul, Turkey. We have a society and two platforms. Citizens Basic Income Research Development Culture and Dissemination Society is the name of our society. Today, I will go through this outline. At the very beginning, I will very briefly, very shortly mention about the definition and characteristics of the basic income. And then I will say a few words about the pandemic-based complications. Afterwards, I will mention two important tools to keep track of the world's pulse regarding the basic income-related discussions. And then afterwards, there are very limited number of results from an opinion survey. And the title of the survey is Effects of the COVID-19 Pandemic on the UBI Movement. In fact, these are the opinions of UBI advocates. Next, I will tell few words about a big, or maybe in my mind, it's the biggest obstacle to the realization or implementation of basic income in a country. Afterwards, just to add, this is something personal, I would like to add two proposals. I mean, they are additional and complementary to the characteristics of basic income. It might be good to share this in this platform too. And at the very end of my words, I will raise 2 points. I will leave it on the table. If you go with the first agenda item, at the end of my speech, or title of my speech, it will be definition and characteristics. You all know very well, a basic income is a periodic cash payment unconditionally delivered to all on an individual basis without means test or work requirement. In fact, this is the text which was accepted during the General Assembly of BN, our chair is here, dear Dr. Sarath Davala, in 2016. It was, the Congress and the General Assembly was together and it was held in Seoul. So a basic income is a periodic cash payment unconditionally delivered to all on an individual basis without means test or work requirement. Why I repeat this once again or twice again? I will mention it at the very end. Of course, we have to go through the characteristics too. I will not go into each definition, but let me tell the names only. It should be a periodic payment. It should be a cash payment. It should be paid to individuals. It should be universal, and it should be unconditional. These are all known by the basic income advocates and academicians and everybody who are interested with basic income. Also, we can talk about human dignity. We can talk about the ability to say no for individuals. We can talk about freedom to choose, even more freedom to express choices, especially political choices. We can talk about emancipation, but we will not go into that detail. I just raised these issues because they define the characteristics of the concept, the soul of the concept. Let me tell a few words about the pandemic-based complications. They may look, they are not that related. I mean, what I'm talking, I mean, the flow of my speech, but at the end, they will come to a point. The pandemic-based complications is very interesting. At level 1, it started like a major health problem. In fact, it is, still it is. But before it reached to other countries or before it reached to other people, the psychological effects reached to these countries. And there was a massive psychological trauma in the world. Maybe you can call it a global psychological trauma. I mean, how we behave, how we decide, how we do our business, how we buy things, how we decide to buy or not to buy, they all changed. And based on these two complications, I mean the major health problem and massive and global psychological trauma, the economies are damaged. And even if you find a solution today, this doesn't mean that tomorrow we will continue like 1 year ago, because it gives a permanent damage. This is very important. It gives a permanent damage. And Dr. Davala mentioned that the production is more automated now, and because of the pandemic, maybe it speeded up more, and now there's a permanent damage in the economies. But more dangerous one is may come, or in fact we are feeling that it will come, or we are feeling that it's here already. When we consider the countries, they may be developing or underdeveloped, it doesn't matter. You can see these signs in many countries. The democracies made damage because of the pandemic. So there are 4 levels. Level 1 was a major health problem. Level 2 was a massive or global psychological trauma. Level 3 is permanent damage to the economies. And level 4, it might damage to some extent the democracies. I will continue. I will jump to another place, and as I mentioned, I will try to relate them to each other. I would like to mention about 2 important tools. I believe they are important to keep track of the world's pulse regarding basic income related discussions. Why we are trying to keep track of the world's pulse and why we are doing surveys. I will mention these. The first one is the worldwide meetings of UBI advocates and UBI networks. It's interesting. We were holding these meetings since 3 years, but after April, it started to be weekly, and from different continents, from different countries, people are coming there and sharing news, information, and ideas during these meetings. The main master idea, or master target is the communication, interaction, and collaboration of UBI advocates and UBI networks. Another tool is a global map of UBI networks. When we call network, we mean societies, universities, foundations, working groups, platforms, even political parties. They are all welcome. At this map, you can see there are more than 212 networks from more than 55 countries. This is very important because using these connections, we can follow the world's pulse regarding the basic income discussions. And also Indobic is in our map, thanks to them too. Hope to see other networks from Indonesia in this map too. When we come to the opinion survey, using these tools, we are handling some surveys. This one was a separate one. It was an opinion survey, and the title of the survey is Effects of the COVID-19 Pandemic on the UBI Movement, Opinions of UBI Advocates. There are many questions, and it's a very long survey, but I will give the results of 3 or 4 questions. The first question, okay, this is the cover page. There was a presentation in 15th of September, and we shared the intermediate evaluations regarding the survey. By the way, to this survey, we received answers from 20 different countries, and Austria and United States, Slovenia and Hungary, Kenya and Netherlands, France and Spain. I mean, from different continents, from different corners of the world, there are countries who feed answers to this questionnaire. The first question, which I would like to raise is, it asks, do you think that politicians and political parties have an adequate understanding of UBI? It's very interesting. 49.5% of the answers says no, and only 6.8% says yes. If you consider only the red and the blue zones, I mean, if only the yes and no answers, then 87.9% of the people says no. So there is an opinion that the political parties and the politicians do not have an adequate understanding of UBI, which I agree personally to. Secondly, do you think that politicians and political parties are in favor of a UBI, which will lead to emancipation of the people, of the masses? Again, very interesting answers. 32% says no, 6% says yes. Of course, there are other answers, but if you concentrate to yes and no answers, then 84.2% says no. It's very interesting too. So they don't like the emancipation of people. So they want masses in problems, and maybe it gives it introduces a sustainability for their positions. Fourth question, the third question and answer I would like to share it was question number 5, which was about the concept of UBI. And the question is, do you think that politicians and political parties are trying to denigrate the concept of UBI? I mean, degenerate or lower the concept or use the name, but within the execution, do something else. I mean, this is quite interesting. And again, this time 32% says yes, they are trying to denigrate the concept. And 13.6% says no. So if you only consider blue and yes again, and the result is 70.2% of our friends think that politicians and political parties are trying to denigrate the concept of UBI. Of course, this doesn't mean that all the politicians are doing that way, but this is the main, no, this is the opinions of the people, and this is, how I can say, this is the perception in the society. Of course, there are other questions. Let me give you one more too. And the question was, are the integrities of the characteristics that define a UBI being threatened? In fact, very interesting, up to 46.5%, there are some concerns. For example, unconditionality, 46.5% of the answers says that, okay, there's a threat against this. So this is very interesting. Let me summarize them. So, politicians and political parties have an adequate understanding of BI. 87% or even 88% says, no, they don't have adequate understanding. Politicians and political parties are in favor of a UBI, which will lead to emancipation of people. Again, 84% says, no, they don't want people to be, they don't want the emancipation of the masses. And another one, and the last one was, whether the politicians and political parties are trying to denigrate the concept of UBI or not, and it's again 70% yes. These are very important, but my point is, what's the biggest obstacle to the realization or implementation of basic income in the country? My point is, it is the absence of full separation of powers or partial existence of it. Let me show you another slide. This is a slide from 2016. It was about, it was prepared during a discussion on constitutional models. You see, there are two issues to check the systems or constitutional systems. First of all is whether the separation of powers is on the table or not. And second one is how the power is being used. If you consider the x-axis, the horizontal axis, as the separation of powers, then we can start from none and we can go up to 100% or fully separated. So we should go to the right for a healthier and more ideal case. If you consider the y-axis, the vertical axis, as how the power is being used, if you say by 1%, it is the bottom corner, and if the corporate use, it is the top point. So again, for a healthier and more ideal case, we should go up. So you see the red point or red circle and the green circle. Red circle is the absolute dictatorship and green circle is the ideal station. To go to the ideal station, we have to go to the right and we have to go to up, which means we have to introduce full separation of powers, and also this power should be used in by a group of people. I mean, not by a single person. Why I use these together? If you go back, you remember these results, why they are not happy, and if you remember here how it should be. The point is, we can go into details, of course, but because of the limited time, I don't want to spend a lot of time at this stage. The biggest obstacle to the realization of basic income in the country is the absence of full separation of powers or partial existence of it. I mean, partial, separation of powers is there, but not fully. Before finishing my words, I would like to put two more things on the table too. There are two proposals, additional and complementary characteristics of, as an additional and complementary characteristics of basic income. We are working or fighting for them. You remember the first five, which was accepted during the General Assembly on 2016. There are five: periodic, cash payment, individual, universal, and unconditional. Our proposals are, first of all, any basic income or a basic income should not be sized, attached, or otherwise be subject to garnishment for any debt, public or private, arising due to any reason. Non-sizable income. It should be a non-sizable income. This is very, very important. It should be like an oxygen. Like an oxygen, everybody should breathe it, and nobody, it shall not be sized. So this is a proposal, and it has been prepared for the Beyond 2020 Congress and GA in September 2020 in Brisbane, but due to the pandemic, unfortunately, the Congress and the GA were postponed. But still, we are working on it. The second proposal is, in fact, this was a resolution which has been proposed during the Beyond 2017 GA on September 25th of 2017 in Lisbon. However, it has not yet been concluded too, but this one is about basic income is a fundamental human right and a guarantee for fundamental liberties required by human dignity. We believe, in addition to these first five characteristics, these two should be accepted also. In fact, whether we accept or not, it's not a very big problem. But if we accept it, it's more easy to disseminate the idea. Because within the soul or within the character of the basic income, these are already there. It should be non-sizable and it should be considered as a fundamental human right. So, end of my words. I have 2 points to raise. I hope I have time, very short. First one is unconditional and vital mission of all basic income advocates should be to protect the character and soul of basic income. We see, especially during the pandemic, there are too many politicians who are talking about basic income, but what actually they are talking about is not basic income. They are trying to degenerate it, denigrate it, or they are trying to introduce some other policies that they are supporting as if they are a basic income. So the characteristics of the basic income is under threat. In fact, you see it, you can see it as a result of the survey too. So we should be very, very careful and protect the character and soul of basic income. It's not a simple money distribution. It has a philosophy behind it. It's, how I can say, it's related to the human dignity, and it's a power to say no. It's a freedom of choice, freedom to choose, and freedom of expressing the choices. Very, very interesting things we are hearing from different countries. So let me repeat once again. Unconditional and vital mission of all basic income advocates should be to protect the character and soul of basic income. And second one is another sentence. It is, the 4 levels regarding the pandemic-based complications. We believe, also considering the technological development, automation, autonomous systems, robots, etc., etc. I guess, we believe, not only me, a lot of people believe that things are changing, the value set is changing, and we have to be very, very careful. And the second sentence is, democracies must and will enable basic income, which in fact will be the savior of themselves too. This is, I guess, very important. Basic income will be the savior of democracies. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and wish you all a huge success during Congress Jamesa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali, for your very also insightful presentations this evening. So there are several interesting points that what I want to highlight is that your survey results, which is say that 84.2% the politicians and political party don't like the emancipation of the people. So it's kind of very typical characteristics of politicians and political party. And also regarding the COVID-19, actually this is the right time for us to build back better and also to push for a progressive solutions like the universal basic income as the answer to this multidimensional crisis, which started from the health crisis and also spread to other dimensions. So now we would like to hear more from Mr. Jae-Yong Kim on how the experiment or the implementations of the universal basic income in Gyeonggi-do. So over to you, Mr. Kim. 15 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. I am Jae Kim. It's my great honor to present the Basic Income Initiative of Gyeonggi Province at this meaningful occasion. 지금부터 저희 발표는 통역을 통해서 진행하도록 하겠습니다.
From now on, I will speak in Korean and my speech will be interpreted in English.
샤라트 다발라 알리 뮤틀로 선생님의 발표에서도 알 수 있듯이 코로나19 팬데믹은 4차 산업혁명을 가속화시키고 있고 소득 양극화는 물론 사회적 불평등을 심화시키고 있습니다.
As Dr. Davala and Köylüoğlu implied, the pandemic of COVID-19 has accelerated the fourth industrialization and intensified income disparity as well as social inequality.
우리 경기도는 기본소득은 사회적 불평등을 해소하고 경제적 기본권 보장을 위한 최적의 경제정책이다라는 확고한 신념으로 경기도를 넘어서 대한민국의 기본소득이 도입될 수 있도록 노력하고 있습니다.
Under the firm belief that the basic income is the best economic policy that could address social inequality and guarantee the economic basic right, Gyeonggi Province has been committed to adopting the basic income across the nation beyond the province.
오늘 저의 발표는 경기도 기본소득의 역사와 그 정책적 효과 그리고 성공 요인을 먼저 소개하고 기본소득의 전국화를 위해서 경기도의 과제가는 무엇이 있는지에 대해서 말씀드리겠습니다.
For today's presentation, I would like to introduce the history, policy effects, and the keys to success of Gyeonggi's basic income. Then I will talk about what challenges need to be addressed in order to move towards universal basic income of the nation.
먼저 경기도 기본소득이 걸어온 길인데요. 경기도 기본소득은 2016년 성남시 청년배당에서부터 시작하여 이에 대한 폭발적인 호응에 입입어서 2018년 경기도 청년 기본소득을 31개 시군으로 확대 추진할 수 있게 되었습니다.
First of all, Gyeonggi's basic income began as Seongnam City's youth dividend in 2016. The program gained high popularity. So backed by the public support, Gyeonggi Province was able to further expand it to Youth Basic Income Initiative, covering 31 cities and districts of the province starting from 2018.
당시 만 24세 청년에게 연 100만 원씩 기본소득을 지급했습니다.
Under the initiative, all 24-year-old youth in the province annually received 1 million Korean won or $900.
당시 경기도의 이 같은 도전에 대해서 포퓰리즘이다, 심지어는 망상이다라는 온갖 정치적 공격이 있었는데요. 그러나 2020년 코로나19를 계기로 대전환의 시기를 맞이하게 되면서 기본소득에 대한 인식이 크게 변화하였습니다.
This attempt of Gyeonggi Province was politically criticized. Some said it was populist or even a delusion. But standing at a critical juncture of transition in the wake of COVID-19 in 2020, the awareness on basic income has significantly heightened.
경기도는 코로나19 위기 속에 지역 경제 활성화를 위해 도민 1,370만 명 모두에게 재난 기본소득 1인당 10만 원을 지급하고 중앙정부의 기본소득형 재난지원금의 선별 지급이 아닌 보편 지급을 건의하였습니다.
Last year, in amid the crisis of COVID-19, Gyeonggi Province granted 100,000 Korean won or $90 of disaster basic income to all residents or almost 14 million population in order to revitalize local economy. and we proposed the central government to provide basic income-based relief fund to the public universally, not selectively.
초기에는 중앙정부와 정치권의 반대도 있었지만 국민의 여론에 힘입어서 전 국민 지급을 이끌어내는 마중물 역할을 하였습니다.
Initially, we faced the opposition from the central government and political circle. However, our proposal gained public support. So eventually, we were able to take a critical role in making sure the fund be granted to all people.
경기도는 기본소득 전국화를 위해서 농촌 기본소득이라는 또 하나의 실험을 준비하고 있는데 이 부분은 조금 뒤에 더 자세히 설명드리겠습니다.
Recently, Gyeonggi Province has been preparing an experiment of rural basic income with the pursuit of initiating UBI, which I will deal with it later part of my presentation.
다음으로 경기도의 기본소득 사례 및 효과에 대한 발표인데요.
Now let us take a look at policy effects by each basic income scheme run by Gyeonggi Province.
먼저 청년 기본소득이 1인당 연 100만 원씩 지급되면서 청년들의 만족도가 크게 증가한 것을 알 수 있습니다. 특히 표에서 볼 수 있듯이 청년 65.4%가 삶의 긍정적 변화가 있었고 그 이유가 자기 개발을 시도해서 볼 수 있었다라는 응답이 30.4%나 되었습니다.
First of all, as 1 million Korean won or $900 is paid for youth every year, we found out the life satisfaction among youth has significantly increased. Especially as you can see on the slide, 65.4% of recipients responded they experienced positive changes in their lives. Specifically, 30.4% of respondents said the youth basic income allowed them to take a chance to develop themselves.
다음은 코로나19로 인한 지역경제 어려움을 타개하기 위해서 2020년 4월에 전 도민 1인당 10만 원의 경기도 재난기본소득을 지급한 바 있습니다.
The next is Gyeonggi's disaster basic income. Under the policy, Gyeonggi Province provided 100,000 Korean won or $90 to every provincial residents in April 2020. It aimed at helping them weather economic fallout due to COVID-19.
재난기본소득은 현금이 아닌 지역화폐 방식으로 지급하였고요. 지역 내에서 3개월 이내에 연매출 10억 원 이하의 매장에서 사용하도록 설계하였습니다.
And it was given in the form of local currency, which was issued by Gyeonggi Province, not in cash. It was specially designed to be used within the province within 3 months of issuance and at local small businesses with annual revenues less than 1 billion Korean won or around $1 million.
그 결과 대형 상업시설보다 골목상권에서 70% 소비되어 소상공인과 골목상권 등 경제적 약자에게 긍정적 효과를 나타냈습니다.
Also, as much as 70% of provided local currency was consumed at local small businesses rather than large-scale commercial facilities run by conglomerates. It means that the scheme was effective in helping the economically underprivileged, including small businesses and self-employed business owners.
또한 지출 추정치를 살펴보니 재난지원금 지급 이후에 도민에게 지급된 재난기본소득 금액보다 소비 지출이 1.85배 더 높아서 소비 증가 효과를 견인한 것으로 분석되었습니다.
When we estimated the consumption, we found out that the consumption amount after the disaster basic income payment was 1.85 times higher than the granted amount, which means the disaster basic income was effective in driving additional spending.
종합적으로 볼 때 재난기본소득이 가계 가처분소득 확대와 민간 소비 증가를 견인하고 결국엔 OECD 회원국 중에 대한민국의 2020년 경제 성장률이 1위를 달성하는 데 크게 기여했다고 평가할 수 있겠습니다.
Comprehensively, it is evaluated that the disaster basic income expanded household disposable income and lifted up the private consumption at the same time. In turn, the scheme could be said to contribute to helping Korea record the highest economic growth rate among OECD member countries in 2020.
코로나19 이후에 새로운 시대에는 새로운 경제정책이 필요합니다. 기본소득이야말로 수요 창출을 통해 구조적인 경제 침체를 극복하고 경제를 선순환시킬 새로운 경제정책이라고 확신합니다.
As we are ushered in a new era of the post-COVID-19, a new type of economic policy is required. So I'm convinced that the basic income is an economic policy that could overcome a structural economic downturn and create a virtuous cycle in our economy by generating demand.
그렇다면 작은 성공이지만 성공 요인이 무엇일까에 대해서 살펴보겠습니다.
Now let me elaborate on key success factors of the basic income of Gyeonggi province.
첫 번째로는 이재명 도지사를 비롯한 경기도 정책 결정자들의 강력한 리더십이 있었습니다. 이렇게 강한 리더십의 배경에는 기본소득이 국민의 권리라는 확고한 주권 철학이 있었습니다.
First, we had our own strong leadership of policy decision makers, including Gyeonggi Governor Jae-Yong Lee. And the strong leadership was backed by the very firmly established philosophy of sovereignty, that is to say, basic income is the people's inherent right.
이를 바탕으로 경기도는 성남시에서 청년 배당을 성공적으로 추진하였고 이후 여론이나 부정적 시설에 맞서서 전국 최초로 청년 기본소득뿐 아니라 재난 기본소득 정책을 일관성 있고 대담하게 추진하였습니다.
So Gyeonggi province successfully implemented the youth dividend in the city of Seongnam, and then we consistently and boldly pushed for youth basic income as well as disaster basic income for the first time across the nation, despite opponents and pessimists.
두 번째는 리더십이 강력한 행정 추진력으로 이어졌다는 점입니다. 공무원들은 재난 기본소득이 새로운 시대의 정책 대안이 될 수 있다는 확고한 목표의식 아래 강한 추진력을 발휘했습니다.
Second, the leadership was led to a strong administrative momentum. The officials of the Gyeonggi provincial government strongly drove the implementation of the scheme under a very firm recognition of our goal that the disaster basic income could be a new policy alternative in a new era to come.
세 번째는 창조적 선도성입니다. 전국 최초로 정책을 시도하고 추진한 데에는 강력한 정책에 대한 실험 정신이 밑바탕되었기 때문입니다.
The third one was creativity. Gyeonggi province has become the first province in Korea to push for and implement the initiatives, which was possible thanks to a strong spirit of experiment.
끝으로 경기도의 탄탄한 거버넌스입니다. 정책 결정자, 수혜자는 물론 연구진, 시민단체, 경기도 내부의 모든 구성원들이 함께 소통하고 논의할 거버넌스가 없었다면 경기도 기본소득이 성공하기는 어려웠을 것입니다.
Lastly, we had a well-established governance of Gyeonggi province. Gyeonggi's basic income would have not been this successful without the governance that encouraged communications and discussions among policy decision makers, recipients, researchers, civic groups, and all the involved people in and out of the Gyeonggi province.
다음은 경기도를 넘어서 대한민국 국민 모두에게 혜택이 돌아갈 수 있도록 기본소득 전국화 과제에 대해서 설명드리겠습니다.
Now I'll move on to challenges we need to overcome to pursue UBI to make sure all the Koreans beyond Gyeonggi province to enjoy the benefit.
보편적 기본소득 도입 필요성에 대한 근거를 촘촘히 할 필요가 있습니다. 이를 위해서 대한민국 최초로 농촌 기본소득에 대한 사회적 실증 실험을 계획 중입니다.
First of all, we have to come up with well-established ground to adopt UBI. To that end, Gyeonggi province is now in preparation for a social empirical experiment on rural basic income for the first time again in Korea.
농촌 기본소득은 농촌 마을 주민 모두에게 지급됩니다. 실험을 통해 주민생활 변화와 경제적 효과 분석 등을 통해 기본소득 도입의 필요성에 대한 근거를 촘촘히 할 계획입니다.
Rural basic income is to be granted to all rural area residents, including non-farmers. So during the experiment, we'll analyze the lifestyle of rural area residents and economic effects of the plan, which is expected to help us build the ground of the necessity of universal basic income adoption.
기본소득 전국화를 위해서 무엇보다 중요한 것은 국민적 공감대 형성입니다.
And also what matters most is building public consensus.
기본소득 인지도가 낮았던 코로나19 이전에는 반대 여론도 많았습니다. 그러나 코로나19 이후 많은 인식의 변화들이 이 그래프를 통해서 확인할 수 있습니다.
Before COVID-19, the basic income was not well recognized and there were many opponents. But since the onset of COVID-19, we have seen some changes in public awareness on it, and you can see on the slide.
특히 기본소득에 대한 토론과 수기의 공론화 과정을 거친 후에 기본소득 도입 찬성 여론이 1.6배 상승하였고 추가 세금 부과에 대한 동의가 67%로 나타난 것이 그 방증입니다.
Especially public debates and discussions have brought positive changes in public awareness. So the approval rate for the basic income grew 1.6 times and 67% of surveyed residents agreed to levy additional taxes for adopting the scheme.
따라서 기본소득 효과에 대한 국민들의 이해가 더욱 깊어진다면 국민적 공감대 형성은 더욱 커질 것입니다.
The deeper people understand the benefit of BI, then the wider the public consensus we could gain.
재원 대책도 중요한 과제입니다. 저희들의 기본적인 원칙은 점진적 단계적 추진입니다.
Financing is also one of critical challenges that we have to get over. Our fundamental principle lies in a gradual and phased implementation.
예를 들어 1인당 연 50만 원씩 지급한다면 약 25조 원이 소요될 것으로 추산됩니다. 이에 대한 재원 마련은 현재 일반 회계 예산 조정만으로도 가능하다고 생각합니다.
Let's say 500,000 Korean won is to be paid for each resident, then it is estimated that it would require around 25 trillion Korean won or $25 billion. Then we expect just adjustment of general accounts budget would be enough to mobilize financial sources at the moment.
장기적으로 연 200만 원에서 600만 원 정도의 지급 시에는 100조에서 300조 원이 소요될 것으로 추산됩니다. 장기 목표 달성을 위해서는 과세가 불가피합니다.
In a long term, if we provide annually between 2 to 6 million Korean won, then it would require around 100 to 300 trillion Korean won. So in order to meet our long-term target, increasing tax revenues is inevitable.
그 세원으로 우리 사회의 대표적인 공유 자산인 토지, 탄소, 데이터 등의 세금을 부과하는 방안을 생각하고 있습니다.
In this regard, as a new source of tax revenue, we could consider levying taxes on land as shared assets, carbon, and data as well.
끝으로 법률적 장치 마련이 중요한 과제일 것입니다. 현재 기본소득 제도 논의를 위한 3개의 법률과 기본소득 재원 확보를 위한 법안이 대한민국 국회에 발의 중입니다.
Lastly but not least, the most pressing and significant challenge is to come up with legal arrangements. Currently, 3 bills related to public discussions on BI and additional taxes for adopting the initiative have been proposed to the National Assembly.
국민적 공감대와 함께 경제적 기본권이자 국민의 권리인 기본소득 관계법령의 국회 통과를 위해 지원할 계획입니다.
So Gyeonggi Province will support to widen public consensus and make the proposed bills pass through the National Assembly because the BI is an inherent economic basic right of the people.
끝으로 여기 계신 인도네시아 국민들에게 꼭 제안하고 싶은 것이 있습니다.
Today, I have something to suggest to the people of Indonesia.
그것은 바로 기본소득과 지역화폐를 적극적으로 연계하는 것입니다.
That is, you need to map out basic income plans to be interlinked with specially designed local currency system.
앞서 말씀드린 바와 같이 지역화폐를 사용했을 때 그 경제적 효과가 매우 크다는 점을 입증되었고 이는 지역경제 활성화를 이루는 핵심 전략인 점을 다시 한번 강조하고자 합니다.
As I mentioned earlier, it was proved that Gyeonggi's BI led to heightened economic benefits when implemented in association with its local currency. So I'd like to emphasize that the basic income is one of key strategies to revitalize local economies.
인도네시아의 기본소득 계획이 있다면 꼭 지역화폐와 연계하는 한국의 경기도 모델을 참조하시면 좋을 듯합니다.
Therefore, if the Indonesian government has a plan for basic income, then I'd like to ask you to refer to Gyeonggi model that is synthetically linked to its specially designed local currency.
이상 발표를 마치겠습니다. Thank you.
Now I'm wrapping up my presentation. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Mr. Kim, for your presentations. It is very much inspiring that actually basic income is successfully implemented in Asia, especially in South Korea, in Gyeonggi. There's also another answer to the main obstacle to the implementation of basic income, which is usually financing. So many government and many other opponents said that it is impossible to finance this basic income. And the Gyeonggi case is already shown that it is possible by increasing the taxing, for example, for increasing automation, or it is also called robotax, and also that it's actually it would be higher benefit of the basic income if it is combined with the local currency and to strengthen local economy. So it's very also inspiring. So now I would like to move to the Q&A session. Here I see already one of question from Darmawan Prasetya. The question is, the knowledge from the field is so much appealing. Thanks for Gyeonggi province explanation. And would you like to explain what is the public attitude in the first month implementation of universal basic income? This is, I think, can also apply to India, to Dr. Davala, which already also experimented the universal basic income in one of the city or region in India, as well as to to Dr. Ali, if you also have the experience of the implementation of basic income in Turkey. So that's the first question. I would like to give the first opportunity to answer to Mr. Kim as regarding the public attitude in the first month implementation of the UBI. So as the reaction of the public.
저희들이 2020년 4월에 그 재난 기본소득을 지급할 당시에 매우 이제 코로나 위기에 대한 위기심이 매우 높았고 또 경제적 그런 기본권에 대한 호소를 하는 국민들이 되게 많았습니다. 그래서 저희들이 선도적으로 전 국민에게 그 주자는 이른바 이제 보편 지급을 주창하게 되었고, 처음에는 여론과 다른 정당들에서 굉장히 많은 비난이 있었는데 이후에는 국민적인 여론, 지지 이런 것으로 인해서 보편적 지급을 받아들이게 되어서 결국에는 좀 성공하는 그런 케이스가 된 것 같습니다.
Actually, Gyeonggi province provided disaster basic income in April 2020, and at that time, people were like complaining about their hardships due to the COVID-19, and some people were insisting the basic rights of economy. And so Gyeonggi province decided to take the lead in providing universal basic income, and we proposed the plan to the central government. And initially, we faced kind of criticism from the public and from the political parties. However, once we provide the disaster income to all residents of Gyeonggi province, then people were kind of very satisfied, and they started giving us support.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Kim. And you also highlight the importance of consultation and discussions with stakeholders to increase the support to the universal basic income. So now I would like to move to to Dr. Ali for also sharing the experience of experiment of universal basic income in your country.
Oh,
specifically, yeah.
Yeah, I just understand the question. Dear Tatat, we didn't have any experiment up to now. There isn't any such experience in Turkey. But I would like to say a few things based on your words. You said that another obstacle was financing the UBI, and there's a very good example from South Korea. But my point is, financing is not that important. I think the important part is the mechanism. I mean, the figures may develop in the future. Maybe it may be implemented within 3, 4, 5 years. Maybe it may start with a small figure, but the mechanism is very, very important, and it should cover all the people. If you introduce subsets just to finance it, it's difficult to find the correct words in another language. But instead of universally in your country, introducing UBI to everybody, it may be a small amount or not, it doesn't matter. But if you introduce a subset, a group of people, let's say, just certain people who are working like a, I don't know, a government. I mean, it's not important. If you introduce a subset, I'm very sorry because I couldn't find a better word, but it will be a political bribery because you are allocating certain resources to this group and you are trying to receive their sympathy in the political arena. So my point is financing is important, but not that important. More important thing is the mechanism, and it should be for everyone from the very beginning. If you start with a subset, then it's something else. My thought. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ali. Now I would move to Dr. Davala to respond, also with your experience. Thank you. You're still on mute, Dr. Davala. Sorry.
Yeah, we did an experiment in 2011 and 12, and but that was not the first experiment in the developing countries. The first experiment happened in Namibia in 2008 and 9 for 12 months. And in one village, they gave 2,000 individuals a basic income for a period of 12 months, and then found out and came out with a report. We gave 6,000 individuals in 9 villages. Both were rural basic income, and I'm really glad to hear Mr. Kim talking about the next rural basic income experiment in Korea. Now, the first reaction of people of the villages is they can't believe that this is true, because nobody gives anything unconditionally. Maybe your father gives you money, education, and everything unconditionally. Your mother gives, you give to your children. But in a public domain, in a public space, anybody giving you unconditional money every month for a period of 18 months, they said something is wrong with this, because that is not part of our grammar. That is not how today's world we live in. So it took us a long time to make people say that this is actually true. And because it was done by a women's trade union, in the case of Namibia, it was done by the Lutheran Church, who was the donor, and they created a coalition. So they had the credibility in the society to say that this is real and this is true. But if you see the wider public, there is a sense of curiosity by the media, by the scholars, but there's also a lot of cynicism from outside world that this won't work. This kind of thing you are going to, even the regular reactions of the media, bureaucrats, and the policymakers, that you will make people lazy. Because no work, no pay is what we believed as the truth. If you don't work, you don't get anything. But then to say that you are a human being and you have a human right, and as Dr. Ali has pointed out, that it's a human right, it's a basic human right. So then they say that, no, people will drink it away. People will be lazy. People will not participate in the labor market. And the landlords will say they will not come if I offer them lower wage. So that is the world we are used to, but now we want to change to a better world. So that is the public attitude and public reaction to this. I think people are not ready for good things.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Davala. Now we move to the second question from Herni. Based on the question is, based on the experiments you have, what is the impact to the macroeconomic? Some people argue that UBI could create inflation as too much money flowing in the society. I think this is also especially for a resource person who has the experience of the implementation or experiment of the basic income. I would like to give the first opportunity to answer again to Mr. Kim.
경제적 효과에 대해서 분석이 다양하게 이루어진 것이 사실입니다. 그런데 아까도 발표에서 말씀드렸지만은 한국 경제 전체의 그 성장 파이를 키우는 데 기여를 했고, 그다음에 특히 지역화폐로 3개월 내에 사용하도록 설계를 했기 때문에 쓸 수밖에 없었죠. 사람들이 돈을 쓸 수밖에 없었던 것 때문에 지역 경제의 활성화라는 측면은 확실하게 효과가 있었다. 이런 부분들이 통계적으로 증명되었습니다.
Actually, there are various kind of like surveys done to like evaluate the economic effect of the basic income. But comprehensively, I could say that it was very effective in driving up the Korean economy as a whole. And especially for Gyeonggi province, we paid the basic income in the form of kind of local currency. And the local currency was designed to be used within 3 months of issuance. It means that people have no choice but to use that local currency. So it was very effective to revitalize the local economy, and eventually it was also proved by the statistics.
좀 더 구체적으로 말씀드리면 국회 예산처의 분석에 따르면 전체 그 기본소득 재난 기본소득이 13조 정도가 투여됐는데 생산 유발 효과가 21조, 부가가치 효과가 9조, 취업 유발이 한 20만 명 이렇게 되는 것으로 증명되고 있습니다.
More specifically, based on the analysis of the National Assembly Budget Department, the BI was very effective in creating the kind of, actually we paid about 13 trillion Korean won of basic income. And it created about 21 trillion Korean won's production, and also it created kind of added value worth of 9 trillion Korean won, and also it helped like about 200,000 people get a job, and they were employed.
현재 한국에서는 이 재난 기본소득에 대한 논쟁이 계속적으로 이어지고 있습니다.
Actually, there is ongoing debate on disaster basic income in Korea.
IMF 등 국제적인 기구들이 비상한 시기에 확장적 재정 정책을 펴라는 권고가 있고 이에 대해서 한국 내에서도 논쟁이 있지만 저희들은 확고한 확장적 재정 정책을 통해서 이 위기의 시대에 국민들의 경제적 기본권을 지켜야 된다. 이런 신념하에 기본소득을 주창하고 있습니다.
Actually, there are many international organizations, including IMF, to recommend that the government needs to implement kind of extensive like economic policies in this in this time of crisis. So Korean government is implementing this kind of Gyeonggi province is implementing the basic income initiative based on our firm belief that we have to implement this extensive economic policy to secure people's basic rights of economy.
Thank you very much for your response. Now I would like to move to Dr. Ali to respond on the questions from Hernie, which is related to the the experiments, the impact to the macroeconomic of the basic income.
Tata, as I mentioned before, we didn't have any experiments in Turkey, but I would like to say a few things about the experimentation or the pilot projects. At the end of the day, these pilot projects are made by very small groups. So these are we consider them as experiments, but they are not really experimenting the case. I mean, you know, let's say there are millions of people in a city, and you are giving this money to a certain number of people. So you don't feel the real positive impact of universal basic income to the economy, to the society, I mean, to the security point of view, to the peace point of view. I mean, there are too many complications, I mean, positive complications. And these experiments, I think, we had a very interesting discussion in Copenhagen a few years ago. I think at the end of the day, universal basic income is a political choice. I mean, you cannot prove that it is good or bad with experimenting, because experiments are not really modeling the case. For example, how we are going to finance it. Are you introducing any taxation, new taxation? Are you introducing any new customs regulations or new custom taxes or value tax, whatever? Or are you changing your social policies? These are not in the experiments. From a specific fund, you receive a certain amount of money and you distribute it for 6 months, 1 year or 2 years, whatever. It is good for public awareness, but it's not a real experiment. I mean, at the end of the day, universal basic income is a political choice, and it's not possible to make an experiment, in my thought. But it's good for public awareness. I mean, so that not many people will hear the concept.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. Now over to Dr. Davala.
Yeah, Tata, I think I'm not an economist, but I would like to reflect on this question about inflation. Now, this inflationary effect of UBI is speculative, in the sense that you can speculate on the basis of certain assumptions. I can speculate on the basis of other sets of assumptions. So to say that basic income is going to lead to inflation is just one opinion. Now, all of us know that there are... Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All of us know that there are free markets are a myth. They don't exist anywhere. All markets are regulated. So when there is the whole anxiety is that when people have liquidity, when people have cash in their hands, they are going to spend it. And when they spend it, when they are going to spend it, based on the cash they have, I think the traders and the sellers are going to increase the prices because there's huge surplus cash. So that is the logic. But it is possible to regulate the supply side as well. Now, when you see what happened in the villages that we saw, they're all microcosms of the society, that in the villages where the cash has been injected, assets have increased, livestock has gone up, people have made slightly different choices about employment. From a harsh employer, they moved to a less harsh employer. Indebtedness has come down because the dependence on money lending. In fact, our study clearly showed that they moved a little away from money lender who charges very high rate of interest to a relative who may be charging less or nothing. So there are slight shifts that happen in people's behavior. Now, why do we do pilot? I partly agree with Dr. Ali, but I think the pilots bring out evidence about the fact that at the behavioral level, when you do something unconditionally, it works. There are behavioral changes in people, because the biggest objections to a basic income is that people will drink it away, people will use temptation goods, people will waste money, people will become lazy, blah, blah, blah. Okay? I think that is the knee-jerk reaction of politicians, like from the survey, we can see from the survey that Dr. Ali has presented. Now, these are the prejudices people have about the effects of basic income, the behavioral effects of basic income. But then the evidence that we need today and we have today is showing that that is not the case. Similarly, about inflation, we will be able to show if we give a huge basic income, like in the case of Korea. I think South Korea, Gyeonggi-do province, it's an excellent example of what actually happened at a macro level within the province. I think that would be very interesting thing, and the presentation was really excellent to show that.
Yeah, I agree very much with Dr. Davala. Yes, you would like to add?
Is it possible regarding
yes,
inflation?
Sure.
I think we shouldn't only consider distributing the money. We should consider all of them together with the technological developments. I mean, robotic production. So these are leading to reachable prices for everything. For example, first thing I would like to mention is that when there is a UBI, then life will be more different. Maybe we will not have concentrations. Like, for example, we will not need that many transportation vehicles in the mornings. Maybe it will be distributed to the day. So the demand will lower, and maybe there will be a degrowth. When there's a degrowth, maybe it will not have inflation effects. I mean, I would like to mention point by point. First of all, basic income is not only a money distribution. It introduces a peace and harmony in the society. Secondly, technological developments should be considered together. they will reduce the cost of production. I mean, robotic production is in fact making products reachable. And thirdly, it may lead to a degrowth from goods and services point of view. So this will also help to control the inflation. And another thing is maybe it will lead to a demand increase in certain products. But this is also good because in these products, there will be a guaranteed demand volume, which is very, very important to make planning for the future. Planning for the future means that investment for the future, and it will be technological investment again, and the unit prices, cost prices will be lowering too. So we should not be afraid of inflation that much, and we should not consider the inflationary effect by only distributing money. Today, basic income is more hot. I mean, especially within the last 10 years, the technological developments are blowing winds to the sailboat. I mean, the UBI sailboat. It has a direction, it has a concept. Okay, but the technology is really blowing a lot of wind to the sailboat. So we should utilize this opportunity. Thank you very much. We should not be afraid of the inflationary effects.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that we have to think beyond the money and financing and others. It is a very, we have to think further on this, how to implement the universal basic income. And then we move to the third question, which is for Mr. Kim. Are there any political obstacles in the implementation of the UBI idea in Gyeonggi? I think it's actually already explained in the presentations of Mr. Kim. And how did the political will of the government of Gyeonggi arise at the beginning for the implementation of the UBI? So the political, as Dr. Ali also already mentioned, that this basic income implementation is actually a political choice. And then related to it, the question is asking how the political will of the government in Gyeonggi arise at the beginning for the implementation. Is there any encouragement from social movements in the society? Yeah, I over to Mr. Kim.
네, 말씀하신 대로 정치적인 그런 공격, 아까 제 발표에도 말씀드렸지만은 포퓰리즘이다, 그리고 심지어는 망상이다, 이런 비난까지 받았습니다.
Actually, as I mentioned, we were politically criticized a lot. So some say it was populist and some say it was a delusion.
네, 코로나19라는 위기가 저에게는 큰 기회로 다가왔다, 이렇게 이제 말씀드리고 싶고요.
Actually, the crisis of COVID-19 turned as a chance for us.
그것은 두 분 선생님께서도 말씀하셨지만 4차 산업혁명의 급속한 그러한 우리 삶 속에서의 도래, 그리고 내 삶의 직접적인 그 변화들이, 큰 변화들이 일어나기 시작한 거죠.
And actually, as the two presenters implied, the fourth industrialization accelerated, and also there has been some significant changes in people's lives.
저희들은 기본소득이 단순히 개인에 대한 복지적인 차원에서의 지원이다, 이렇게 생각하지 않고 내 삶을, 미래의 내 삶을 설계하는 그러한 설계도, 청사진이다, 이러한 계획을 가지고 있었습니다.
Actually, we thought that the BI is not a kind of welfare, kind of a benefit for individuals. Actually, we thought that the BI could be the basis for the design of people's lives in the future. It could work as kind of blueprints.
그래서 용기 있게 대담하게 전국민 보편 직업이라는 것을 주장하였고 중앙정부를 설득했고 그것이 현실화되었습니다.
Actually, we implemented the UBI with our boldness and also with our braveness. And that's why we tried to persuade the central government to implement the UBI, and it became the reality.
그 결과 코로나 이전에는 기본소득에 대한 찬성이 30% 미만이었는데 코로나 이후에 1차 저런 기본소득에 대한 지급이 되고 국민들이 스스로 그것을 경험하고 난 뒤에는 50% 이상의 그러한 지지를 지지 변화가 있었고 기본소득이란 자체의 인지도 변화도 매우 컸다는 것을 저희들이 생생히 확인할 수 있었습니다.
Actually, before the COVID-19, there was a kind of the approval rate for the basic income was just 30%. However, after the COVID-19 and we provided the first UBI, then people felt the benefit at first hand. So the figure, the number of who are going for the UBI went up to 50%. And also the public awareness on the basic income has increased a lot.
아까 알리 박사님 말씀처럼 저도 똑같이 생각합니다. 기본소득에서 재정을 사람들은 돈을 먼저 얘기하는데 돈보다도 아까 알리 박사님은 메커니즘이다 이렇게 말씀하셨고요.
Actually, I agreed to Dr. Ali. Dr. Ali said that when people talk about the BI, they consider the finance first. However, it's not important. What matters most is the mechanism.
다발라 선생님도 설계도 디자인의 중요성을 이렇게 말씀하셨는데 전적으로 두 분 선생님의 말씀을 공감하면서 아까 말씀드린 대로 기본소득은 단순히 돈을 지급하고 받는 그런 것이 아니고 내 삶을 책임지는 어떤 그런 향후의 미래의 그런 설계도이고 그 다음에 현실적으로도 굉장히 중요한 경제정책의 일환이다. 이렇게 저희들은 대규모 실험을 통해서 확인할 수 있었습니다.
Actually, as Mr. Davala said that the design of the basic income is the most important as well. So I totally agree with the two presenters. And actually, we think that BI is not something just giving money to people, but we think that the BI could guarantee the future of the people as a blueprint. And in reality, I think it is part of economic policy as well. So that is the most important thing that I think.
저희들은 더욱더 다양한 그 실험과 도전을 계속할 거라고 생각하고요. 이 기회를 빌어서 한번 좀 물어보고 싶은 질문이 있습니다. 근데 뭐냐면 저희들이 이제 농촌 기본소득을 올해 4월 달에 계획을 하고 있습니다. 그런데 이 농촌 기본소득을 두 분 박사님께서는 매우 글로벌하게 연구를 하고 계신 걸로 알고 있는데 농촌 기본소득을 설계하는 데 있어서 좀 중요 포인트가 뭔지 좀 무엇을 유의했으면 좋겠는지 이런 부분들 좀 조언을 듣고 싶습니다.
So Gyeonggi province is going to keep going on in carrying out experiment and challenges. And actually, right now I have a question that goes to the two presenters here. Actually, Gyeonggi province is planning to implement the rural basic income in April this year. So as experts, two doctors here, do you have any advice for Gyeonggi province in designing the rural basic income experiment?
So yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kim, for your response, as well as for the question for other two resource persons. And I would like to offer first to Dr. Davala to respond on the questions.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure to hear about this new experiment. That rural basic income experiment is most welcome, and I think it's much needed. And I think if we go by the model that Gyeonggi province in the last experiment that you did of the social economy model of if that is the case, I think you will really stimulate the rural economy as well. I'll give you an example. In the state I live in India, 2 years ago, the local government has introduced a basic income for farmers. And what is interesting is it's universal. It's to 56 million farmers. It is universal, it's unconditional, and it's twice a year for 2 seasons of the crop. And we have seen in the last 2 years itself, after 1 year, agricultural production has gone up, productivity has gone up. It has really created such a huge impact in the rural areas that all other state governments, politicians have started imitating. And in fact, even the federal government started imitating this model, and each one coming out with their own versions. But this was a classic example. In fact, on 29th of January, there is going to be a conference, half-a-day conference in Gyeonggi-do, online conference. So on rural basic income, I'm going to bring some of these experiences also there. I think it's an excellent move.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now I over to Dr. Ali.
Thank you, dear Tatat. Thank you, Mr. Kim. To tell the truth, I don't have something very specific at this moment, but very nice to hear such a question from you. My point is, I think most important part of these exams are public awareness. So it will create huge public awareness, and maybe I don't know how we can do, but maybe you should try to introduce certain things that which will cover the missing dimensions of the experiments. You see, in the experiment, you are experimenting based on certain parameters. For example, financing the UBI, that side is totally not in the picture. Or another thing I would like to say is that as a side product of this meeting, if you agree, we can make another meeting. And during that meeting, maybe you can give more details about your model, and we can invite more friends globally, and they can contribute with their experiences too. It might be an interesting workshop. We will be more than happy to organize it. But at this stage, what I would like to say is there are some missing dimensions within the experiments. Maybe it's better to maximize to cover these missing points within the experimental phase. I put my email in the chat box also. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Dr. Ali. Now we move to, there's a question for Dr. Ali. It said that Dr. Ali said it is not allowed to be in debt for the funding for a UBI. Is it the government which shouldn't be in debt for funding the UBI, or the people should be free from debt? So that's a question from the statement from Dr. Ali.
Would you please repeat the question? I couldn't understand it. You are muted, dear Tatat.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So regarding the financing itself,
you are muted again.
I'm sorry. Yeah, regarding the funding for the UBI, you mentioned that shouldn't allow to be in debt. So the government shouldn't allow to be in debt. So something related to debt, which is mentioned by the questions. Is it the government or the people who shouldn't be in debt? So some
in debt?
Yes, debt. Yeah.
Debt.
Yeah.
I didn't say something like this, but let me tell you my points about this issue. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, UBI, I mean, it's being discussed since several centuries. Nowadays, it's a very hot topic because of the technological developments and the pandemic, especially within the last year. But the point is, there's a group of people, let's say millions or tens of thousands, whatever, and they have an umbrella organization. The umbrella organization in our case are the governments. Because why? The governments have the legislative power. They can introduce some new laws, taxation, regulation, whatever necessary. But the important thing is the people in this group and this umbrella organization, not on top of them, but organized by them, because we don't consider them as an upper organization. It should be like a partnership in a company. So all the individuals, all the citizens should feel that they are a part of the government, and they, in fact, it's not government debt. At the end of the day, it is the people's debt. I mean, the government is a fictitious something. It is the whole society's debt. So here, the most important thing is this umbrella should function very well in a transparent manner, without any corruption, and with correct investments and with correct policies. And the people under this umbrella should be able to check this and should be able to, how I can say, with their votes, should be able to make modifications or make necessary corrections, whatever. So regarding, when we go back to the question, there is no debt of the government or debt of the people. At the end of the day, government is our government, and the debt is our debt also. And I don't know, I couldn't get the question exactly, but taking this opportunity, I try to say a few words. Thank you very much, Sarath.
Yeah. I think maybe also there's some problem with the interpretation. So yes, Dr. Davala, please.
Yeah, I just want to add something to what Mr. Kim has said in response to the question about the social movement. I think the Korean situation is a very, very interesting situation. In fact, I have been to their conferences last 3-4 years. I've been regularly going. I've been observing them very keenly. I think one of the most important ingredient in bringing out a model in Korea is that the political leadership is extremely motivated. Particularly the governor, Mr. Lee Jae-Myung, has been right from 2016-15 when he was the mayor of Songnam province onwards. He has been very keen to, we are completely convinced about this idea and very keen to implement. And in so many forms, he has been coming out. Number one, political leadership. Number two is a good scientific establishment, working very hard to bring out rigorous evidence. That is extremely, extremely, extremely important. And third is that they are coming out with a concrete model. That is that let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, and prove to the world. And prove to the world particularly to dismiss the stupid prejudices the world has. I think that is the contribution of Korea in this manner. I really congratulate Mr. Kim and Gyeonggi province. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Davala. Now I have also the question for the three resource persons. What is the downside of the universal basic income that needs to be anticipated? So this is kind of the honest question from the people. So what is the downside that needs to be anticipated for if we want to push for the implementation of universal basic income?
유비아에 있어서 예상될 수 있는 그런 악영향은 무엇이 있을까요? 그런 얘기죠.
먼저 샤라타 다발라 박사님 칭찬받으니까 매우 기분이 좋습니다. 말씀하신 대로 가장 중요한 것은 정치의 역할이라고 생각합니다. 그래서 정치인과 정당이 미래의 그런 국가와 그 개인의 삶을 어떻게 인식하고 있고 그것을 설계하느냐, 이것에 좌우될 수 있다. 크게 변화할 수 있다 이렇게 생각합니다.
Actually, I'm really happy for happy that Davala made very good compliments about our success. And actually, I think the political leadership and political role is the most important thing in implementing UBI. Actually, the politicians and political parties, they should recognize and they should design the future of individuals and the nations. That kind of direction could determine the future of people and the future of a nation. That's what I think.
근데 재밌는 것은 저랑 기본소득이 국민들의 지지도가 올라가면서 그것을 전통적으로 반대했던 야당들도 기본소득을 주장하고 있는 상황입니다.
Actually, what is interesting is that actually the disaster basic income has garnered popularity from the public. So as a result, and these days, some party who were opposite to the idea is now turning their opinion and their attitude towards basic income, and actually they are trying to giving kind of support for us.
여기서 많은 그러한 그 안들에 대해서 일일이 설명드릴 수는 없지만 저희들은 매우 우려하고 있는 지점이 기본소득의 대정신과 철학과 그런 부분들을 위배하는 속에서의 어떤 가짜 기본소득의 안들이 나오고 있다는 것입니다. 그래서 아까도 말씀드렸지만 돈을 어떻게 지급하느냐의 문제에 초점이 맞춰져 있는 것이 가장 단편적인 증거입니다.
Actually, there are many views for the basic income these days. I cannot give you detailed. However, what we concern is that there are some not good basic income. Actually, that goes against the spirit and the philosophy of the true basic income. It means that these days there are many people who are only focusing on the way of the payments. It's not a good way of it's not good direction in discussion basic income.
그래서 저희들은 아까 두 선생님이 말씀하셨던 재정이 중요한 것이 아니고 메커니즘이고 인식이 중요하다는데 전적으로 동의를 하고 그런 바로 미래의 어떤 그런 설계도를 만들어내는 경쟁으로 기본소득이 진화하고 발전되어야만 그러한 가짜 기본소득 안들에 대해서 맞서서 싸울 수 있다. 그리고 진정한 의미의 보편적 기본소득이 관철될 것이다. 이렇게 예상하고 있습니다.
So, as the two presenters said, I really totally agree that the mechanism and design is the most important thing rather than just financing. So, for the as a future blueprint or future design, we have to go against the fake kind of bad type of basic income. So we have to make improvement and advancement in terms of basic income. So we have to pursue the real and true basic income for the people and for the nation.
그래서 저희들은 이러한 그 철학을 기초로 한 운동들을 벌여오고 있는데요. 다발라 박사님은 잘 아시겠지만은 올해 4월 14일부터 16일까지 경기도에서는 제3차 기본소득 박람회를 개최합니다. 그래서 많은 관심과 아까 말씀드렸던 그러한 가짜 기본소득을 상대하기 위해서는 이러한 대중적인 운동과 정치가 병행이 된다 이렇게 생각을 하고 많은 관심과 지지를 부탁드리겠습니다.
Actually, based on that philosophy, we have waged several moves. So from 14 to 16 in April, Gyeonggi province is going to hold the third basic income fair. So I'd like to ask you for your interesting and continued support. That's based on your support, I think we could go against the negative basic income.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Kim. Now I would like to move to Dr. Ali.
Thank you very much. I mean, instead of downsides, maybe we should talk about the potential negative issues. May I continue?
Yes.
Okay. My point is, I'm trying to take notes. The value set is changing, and all the political mechanisms are also changing. While promoting for UBI, suddenly something may happen. Maybe it will be again UBI, but it will be only a distribution of money, but it will not lead to the emancipation of the people. So we should be very, very careful with the full concept. I mean, it's not only distributing money. This is first thing. Secondly, we should try to disseminate the idea in every country, all around the world. Every country should take this into consideration. The reason is that, let's say there are neighboring countries, one of them has UBI, the other one do not have. Then there will be human traffic, goods and services traffic, and even production facilities traffic between the countries. Because in two countries, the system will totally change. The taxation issues, value-added tax, custom regulations, everything will change. So there will be some advantages in one and disadvantage in the other one. So there will be a traffic from these points. I'm not against this, but the point is, it's better to make it real as simultaneously as possible. Another issue is our society in Turkey is called Citizens Basic Income, Research, Development, Culture and Dissemination Society. Dissemination is important, but much more important issue is the culture. It requires a separate culture, separate way of thinking. So maybe not a new one, but a modified culture is necessary for a UBI. So I think it should be supported with a huge education campaign too. What else? I mean, the world is shuffling the cards. So in the new set of values, in the new paradigm, we should be ready. And while implementing the basic income, we should try to protect the characteristics and soul of basic income, and we should be very, very careful. Otherwise, instead of creating emancipation, I mean, instead of introducing emancipation of the people, maybe we can come to a point, it might be like a slavery of people. I mean, we should be very, very careful with the small touches. It's not only distributing money. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to move to Dr. Davala.
Yeah, I think it is not definitely basic income is not about cash. It's not a cash transfer. There's a difference between a cash transfer and a basic income. Basic income is about care, as I said in my presentation. It's about caring for the population. It's about philosophy. Whereas if you have 5 points that Dr. Ali very well put in his presentation, 5 characteristics of basic income: cash, periodic, which is monthly, and to individual. I think all these 3 are nothing new about it, nothing innovative about it. What is really innovative? The real innovativeness is about universal. In fact, even universal we have had in the past, many programs, government programs of universal, but then the real cutting edge is the unconditional. I think that is real cutting edge. So I'm not against incrementalism, that if you're experimenting, if you have taken all youth, if you have taken all the rural population, if you have taken the entire farmers, or if you have taken all the women in the society, which was one proposal made in India, in a certain segment, you make it universal, but more important than is you make it unconditional. That is the real experiment in our society, because we are so tuned to targeting that only the deserved will get it, only the affected will get it, only these people will get it. So that targeting is always arbitrary. Targeting never be foolproof. So the incremental way Korea is experimenting is truly a global model, I think. And in the process of this experimentation, they are also convincing a large population and the media and the intelligentsia. I think that's the way to go.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, thank you very much for your response. So now I think we've come to the end of the discussion. We're almost 5 minutes to the end. If you still have any closing statements for the Indonesian people and for all the participants here, I would like to over to Mr. Kim first.
오늘 정말 멋진 토론이었다고 생각합니다. 말씀하신 대로 기본소득의 정의는 시대 상황과 국가별로 다양할 수 있다고 생각합니다. 그러나
Actually, it was very great discussion. The concept of BI should be different based on the context of the era and the context of the nations.
중요한 것은 인류의 보편적 가치인 여기 뒤에 보이시는 글자가 한글로 공정이라는 뜻입니다.
However, what is the most important thing is that kind of universal value. Here you can see a Korean 공정. It means justice and fairness.
공정과 공공성 그리고 공동체 이러한 인류의 보편적 가치를 관철시키는 그러한 훌륭한 전략이 바로 기본소득이다 이렇게 생각을 하고요.
I think the best strategy to uphold the universal value is basic income.
오늘 두 선생님 말씀을 잘 새겨들어서 더욱더 창조적이고 선도적인 그러한 그 실험과 도전을 경기도는 계속하겠다. 그리고 같이 해주실 것을 이렇게 좀 부탁드리겠습니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you for your discussions today. So Gyeonggi Province is going to, it will be committed to conducting very creative kind of and leading experiments in the future. Like we will continuously do it.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kim. Now I over to Dr. Ali.
샤라트 다발라 선생님 감사합니다. 질문이 있는데 그냥
Thank you.
문자하는 얘기인데 그 박사님 뒤쪽에 계신 사진 속에 여인은 누구이신가요?
Davala, I have a question, kind of joking. I can see the photo behind you. Who is the beautiful woman in the picture?
Yeah, she's the woman who gave me birth, my mother. She's still alive. She's 86 years old.
Oh,
She's my
Oh.
inspiration.
Okay, all right. So,
Thank you for
Dr. Ali,
asking.
Dr. Ali, your closing statement. You're on mute,
You're muted.
Dr. Ali.
You're muted. Ali, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you a lot for this opportunity. It was very beneficial for me to be with our friends, dear Dr. Sarath Davala and dear Mr. Kim. It was very valuable. I was trying to make a correct translation. In Turkey, may I share something very quickly? In 1 second. In 1 second.
Yes, sure.
Okay, 1 second. No, not here. Okay, here. The one in red at the middle. Let me translate it to you. We must move forward with pioneering contemporary solutions that catch the age, just as we did in the period when our republic was founded. This is our motto. And it was, I think, similar with dear Dr. Davala's words. The pioneering and contemporary solution is, which will catch the age, is universal basic income. And we have to work for it, fight for it, not only in our countries, but all around the world. And thanks technological developments, they are introducing the environment to realize it. And maybe not directly thanking, but also the pandemic just speed it up. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ali. Now over to Dr. Davala for your closing statement.
Yeah, I mean, on Indonesia, I think, like we have discussed about Korea, the ingredients of political leadership, a strong scientific community, and evidence-producing zeal. I think Indonesia, you have all this. You're assembling all these things. You have a good scientific community interested in it and wanting to produce evidence. And you have so many, I've seen, it was a pleasure to see your 3-day conference where so many politicians, former ministers actually coming and addressing and speaking. So that is an extremely good sign. And your idea of the coalition of all mayors of Indonesia is an excellent idea. I think those are real steps. As UBI advocates, I think I strongly feel that we should keep doing our job. When it will materialize is we should leave it to our destiny. It will come. But I think when you start, you're always alone. So we should do good scientific work. We should build perspectives and philosophy of basic income. We should dream about a better society. I think you're all geared up to do it. I think in Indonesia, in the next 3 years, we can see miracles happening. All the best to Indonesia Basic Income Group. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davala, Mr. Kim, and also Dr. Ali for all very interesting and also enlightening discussions. And also, I highlight several points, which is that this is the time for us to push for the universal basic income, especially in our respective countries, which hasn't implemented it yet until now, because there's this COVID-19 opportunity where we should build back better and also to make the better societies after the COVID-19 pandemic. And as also all the 3 speakers mentioned, it is not about the financing, it is beyond the financing or funding. It is for the future of the people, for the greater good, and also that universal basic income is an inherent rights of the people. So I would like to stop here and close the discussions. I thank you for all these resource persons once again, and also all the committee, Prakarsa and Universal Basic Income Network Indonesia, Indo-Big Network also. So thank you very much, and I hope all of you to be healthy in this pandemic situations, which is we still don't know when it will be over. So in these uncertain situations, I wish you all always to be healthy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Bye-bye.
much. Bye-bye. Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you so
Kim, and
much.
bye, Ali, and bye,
Special
Tata.
thanks to
Thank
Ciao,
Thank you so
Davala.
much,
Ciao,
Tata,
Kim.
Dr.
Bye-bye.
Köylüoğlu, Dr. Davala, and Mr. Kim. And thank you for ladies and gentlemen, the participants and attendees that just stay here until the end of this session. So tomorrow and on Friday, we have a series of the session, of the special sessions, and I hope we will glad to welcome you all in our session. Thank you so much. Have a good rest and good night all. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Stay healthy.
Bye-bye.